It begins with a voice shaking on the end of a phone line. Do you know how many people have run in? Do you know how many offenders there are? No, we don't. Sorry. Okay, tell me exactly what's happened. The front door, they've beaten the front door in. We've run upstairs into our room and locked ourselves in. The front door of the bank, you mean? Yes, the front door of the bank. Stay on the line. Police are on the way. Tell me what you can hear. We can't see anything. The blinds are down. They're beating the door in now. We just ran upstairs. Upstairs, the lights are off. A group of employees stand pressed together in a small office, trying not to breathe too loudly. Downstairs, glass is shattering. Heavy boots are moving across the floor. Every second feels stretched thin. The staff don't know if the men are armed. They don't know how many there are. They only know that a normal working day has turned into something terrifying. This scene was not unique. Between 2008 and 2015, variations of this moment played out again and again across Merseyside, Cheshire, and East Yorkshire. Different buildings, different employees, the same sudden violence, the same method, the same fear. At the center of it all was a six-man crew: Ian Stewart, Kieran Whittle, John Stewart, Alan Lee, Sean McDonald, and Gary McNeil. They would later be linked to 23 robberies targeting banks and post offices across the north of England. For nearly 7 years, they operated with consistency that felt almost mechanical. Their approach was direct. There were no elaborate disguises or dramatic speeches. There was no attempt to charm or negotiate. They relied on force, speed, and intimidation. A stolen high-performance vehicle, often an Audi or BMW, would arrive abruptly outside a target location. Within seconds, masked men armed with sledgehammers and crowbars would storm the entrance. Sledgehammers are not subtle tools. They do not quietly bypass security systems. They announce themselves with explosive noise. Doors splinter, glass bursts inward, alarms trigger. The shock alone is enough to freeze people in place. For employees inside, there is no time to process what is happening. One moment they are serving customers or balancing tills. The next, they are running for safety. Many of the targeted branches were chosen carefully. They were often located near motorway access points, allowing a fast escape onto major roads. Some were isolated enough that help would not arrive instantly, but not so remote that they lacked cash reserves. The gang understood geography. They understood timing. They understood that speed was their greatest ally. After smashing their way inside, they would demand access to safes or cash drawers. Staff later described shouting, aggressive movements, and the constant threat implied by heavy tools being swung through the air. Even when no firearms were visible, the unpredictability of the situation created intense fear. Employees had no way of knowing how far the attackers were willing to go. Within minutes, the men would leave, carrying cash in bags. The stolen vehicles would be abandoned shortly afterward, sometimes set alight to destroy forensic evidence. By the time police units fully mobilized, the gang was often gone, dissolving back into ordinary streets and traffic. Over time, the total amount stolen reached up to £1.5 million. On paper, that sounds significant, but spread across 6 individuals and divided over 7 years, it did not amount to extraordinary wealth. The risk was constant. The consequences, if caught, would be severe. Yet success breeds confidence, and confidence can blur caution. For years, the robberies continued. Each incident generated headlines and local anxiety. Employees across the region became more alert, more nervous. Training sessions on robbery response felt less theoretical and more personal. Managers began to worry not just about staffing shortages or daily targets, but about whether their branch might be next. Behind the scenes, investigators were working to connect the dots. The Northwest Regional Organized Crime Unit, known as Titan, recognized that these incidents were unlikely to be random. Patterns began to emerge. Similar methods of entry, similar vehicle types, similar escape routes. Investigating organized robbery is rarely dramatic in the way films portray it. It involves hours of surveillance, reviewing CCTV footage, tracking stolen vehicle reports, and analyzing mobile phone data. Officers sat in unmarked cars for long stretches, observing routines and movements. Analysts compared dates, times, and locations, building timelines that stretched across counties. Technology played a growing role. Automatic number plate recognition cameras recorded vehicle movements. Cell site analysis identified mobile phones connecting to towers near robbery scenes. Forensic teams examined items recovered from abandoned cars, fragments of gloves, discarded masks, cigarette ends. Each small detail became part of a larger puzzle. The investigation intensified under what became known as Operation Musker. Rather than focusing on a single robbery, authorities aimed to dismantle the entire network. That required patience. Acting too soon could mean insufficient evidence. Waiting too long risked further victims. The balance was delicate. As the years progressed, the gang's repeated methods became a signature. The use of sledgehammers, the rapid forced entry, the reliance on powerful stolen cars. What once felt unpredictable began to form a recognizable pattern. And patterns are what investigators rely on. In 2015, surveillance increased significantly. Officers monitored suspected movements, they observed reconnaissance trips and potential preparations. Communication between different regional forces strengthened, reducing the geographical gaps the group had previously exploited. The net tightened gradually. When arrests were finally made, they were coordinated and decisive. Armed officers and tactical units moved simultaneously to prevent escape or destruction of evidence. The men who had spent years arriving suddenly at other people's workplaces now found that sudden arrival reversed upon them. In custody, interviews began. Some denied involvement, others offered limited responses, but the evidence was substantial. DNA linked individuals to items connected with robberies. Mobile phone data placed suspects near crime scenes at relevant times. Stolen vehicle records aligned with surveillance footage. Financial patterns and associations reinforced the connections. By the time the case reached Liverpool Crown Court, the prosecution presented a structured narrative covering 7 years of activity. The courtroom heard not only about the logistics of the crimes, but about their human impact. Employees described the terror of hearing doors smashed open. One recounted hiding in a dark room with colleagues, listening to shouting below and fearing the attackers might reach them at any moment. Another spoke of being physically dragged, resulting in long-term injury. Many described sleepless nights, anxiety, and a lingering sense of vulnerability even after security upgrades were installed. The focus shifted from money to consequences. £1.5 million was discussed, but so were the dozens of individuals affected. The cost extended beyond stolen cash. It included trauma, counseling, increased security expenses, and community fear. Faced with extensive evidence, several defendants changed their pleas to guilty. The strength of forensic links, surveillance data, and coordinated testimony left little room for doubt. The narrative was no longer fragmented incidents but a continuous operation. Sentencing reflected the seriousness of the offenses. Alan Lee received 16 years imprisonment. Karen Whittle was sentenced to 15 years. John Stewart received sentences totaling 13 and 12 years. Sean McDonald was given 13 years and 4 months. Ian Stewart received 13 years. Gary McNeil was sentenced to 12 years. For the victims, the sentences marked a formal acknowledgement of harm. For the region, it marked the end of a persistent threat. For the 6 men, it marked the collapse of a 7-year operation built on speed and force. The irony is stark. Their method relied on breaking physical barriers quickly. Yet what ultimately stopped them was something slower and quieter: data, coordination, and patience. Each robbery added another layer of evidence. Each escape left another trace. In the years that followed, banks and post offices across the affected counties gradually regained a sense of stability. Security measures improved. Communication between forces strengthened. The story became a reminder that repetition can create both opportunity and exposure. What began with smashed doors and frantic phone calls ended in a courtroom, with heavy sentences replacing heavy tools. The echoes of shattering glass were replaced by the closing of cell doors. And somewhere in the memory of those who hid upstairs in darkened rooms, the sound of that first impact, the front door giving way, remains a moment when ordinary life split in two.